And welcome back to Law and Society, where legal and social issues come together. Andrew Stevenson, attorney at law, is our special host guest here. I guess you're the host and the guest.
I guess I'm both, Mark.
And you also hold a PhD in sociology.
Yes, I do.
Which, again, it's really kind of a unique combination, a neat combination, because not only are you defending folks in court, but you're kind of looking at the roots of some of these problems in society as well.
I do. My interest in sociology and criminology, as I said earlier, has led me to kind of take a passion for public speaking, to educate and kind of bring some awareness.
Let's talk about some of your public speaking. I know you've done some things at OUL. You talked about going to Logan.
I was in Logan. I've done different schools, high schools.
Are you talking to the parents, the students, both, the educators? I mean, what interest level are they giving you here?
I have two kind of different presentations. When I talk to the parents, I tell them don't bring your kids because the kids are going to hate me. Because what I'm going to tell you is going to make their life less fun.
You're going to narc them out, right?
I'm going to narc them all out. I'm going to rat them all out. And the parents leave kind of, it's a shock and awe presentation. Yeah. Some of the stuff I get into, for example, about the dark web. And the drug trafficking that goes on in the dark web, that parents have no idea that their children have access to.
Most people don't even know what the dark web is.
Right.
They may have heard, all the credit report stuff about the dark web.
Right.
But it's some sort of mysterious thing out there that it doesn't affect me. It's not something I'm involved with.
And then things like that, and then the deleting apps that are another problem. I think that parents are unaware of, things along those lines. So. That's a lecture for the parents to help inform them and guide them and let them make better choices on how they decide to parent their children. The lecture to the kids, and I hate to use the word kids, maybe teenagers is more appropriate. It's humorous. It's fun. I come at it from a different perspective. I'm not very preachy. I just tell stories. And I just say, hey, these are things I know people have done, and these are the consequences. You make the decision.
These are the kind that I've defended for the last 20 years, right? In our courts. And your practice is you're limited to criminal defense.
That's all I do.
And how many counties? How big an area are you serving?
I actually go all over Ohio. I'm primarily the southern half of Ohio. I tend to do larger, more complicated cases. I've had some very high-profile cases.
Drugs are a part of what you do.
A part of what I do. They're not my focus, but they are a part of what I do.
We're talking about marijuana today and the impact and the implications we have coming here in Ohio as medical marijuana becomes a reality. And there are, you said it in the first segment, there are benefits. There are health benefits. I know I've heard glaucoma folks that have glaucoma for many years, it relieves pressure. Cancer patients, it restores some appetite. There are some things that obviously the THC in marijuana, there is a beneficial medical effect for certain people.
Yes.
And that's what is up to the physician to determine when it's going to be of benefit, right? So now we have kind of this attitude, well, if it's good for you, will this lead to more casual use, I guess? In your opinion, what's going to happen?
I think it's going to be more readily available. I think it's going to be more prevalent.
How available is it now?
It's incredibly available.
Okay.
There's also an incredibly high demand.
Okay.
One of the unknown consequences of marijuana is that it is a profitable business to illegally sell, which generates what I have seen, robberies, burglaries, assaults because of the money aspect of this. It's still a criminal enterprise to sell marijuana.
It is, even though we've kind of lightened that up. The laws have gone from felony to misdemeanor, minor misdemeanors for possession. We don't look at it the same way we did 20 years ago, but it's still a pervasive problem.
And I've also seen, in my opinion, it is a gateway drug.
Okay, that was the next thing I was going to ask you.
Parents.
It is still, because our DARE programs for years and years and years say marijuana is the gateway to the harder drugs. And you're saying you believe that? I
believe that for two reasons. Not just from a physiological standpoint, but because it's illegal, the buying and the selling and the distribution and the collecting opens doors, an understanding of how criminal interactions work, how you buy and sell illegal narcotics. and therefore that provides an insight into how to do it for other narcotics, not just marijuana. You understand? You're no longer as afraid to go and conduct an illegal transaction.
And some of our media has, in our entertainment, has really kind of glorified some of that, or made it look, I don't know, more popular than maybe it is. And I think about Breaking Bad and these types of shows where, you know, here's this vault full of money this guy has made by making meth.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it looks like this easy opportunity to, you know, get into something that, oh, you might get arrested, you might not. But, you know, I think that's it's a bit of an oversimplification.
It is. There are a lot of young, predominantly men, who get in the business of selling marijuana because it's profitable. And before they know it, they start selling other stuff.
Right.
And before they know it, they're
heroin dealers, and they're
facing big-time prison sentences.
Right.
And they started off very simply just selling a little marijuana to their friends.
And Andrew, you live in this community, and you see the effect, not just in our area, but all over of the opiate issue we've got. And
it's devastating.
And if we can prevent the start of that by again, being responsible here, or creating a responsible society, all the better, right?
Complete agreement.
Let's get into one of the issues that's going to, you know, obviously be something that our safety forces are looking at, and that is DUI. Now, we think of DUI as drunk driving,
correct?
Right? I mean, if you
but
think
it can also be drug driving.
Well, that's just it. Now, I go and I have hay fever, right? So I take my Sudafed or whatever I'm taking for it. And I read that little label, and it says, "Do not operate machinery." Right? So I'm thinking, well, I will get on my tractor, but that means I shouldn't be driving too, right? I mean, there are.
Well, what the law says is it's illegal to operate a motor vehicle if you have consumed alcohol or a narcotic, and though the narcotics are listed in schedules, so it has to be on a list.
Okay.
And that's impaired your ability to operate the vehicle.
But we know that marijuana, you smoke weed and get in your car, it's going to have an effect on how you drive.
It is, but there's also a kind of hidden concern.
Okay.
Which is that just like alcohol, there's a limit of 0.08.
Okay.
There's a limit for other narcotics that you're allowed to have in your system. And marijuana has a limit of 35 nanograms per milliliter. Doesn't make a lot of sense, except that if you recall, marijuana stays in your system. And if you're a frequent user and you smoke enough on a daily basis, you may be over the limit for marijuana, even though you're not currently impaired. So there are going to be people who are going to get potential DUI charges who aren't impaired because they're over the limit because they use medical marijuana.
So I get stopped, or somebody gets stopped in a routine. I was going over the speed limit or whatever it is. How does the officer then determine whether I'm, you know, if he doesn't detect a smell, can he order me to go have a blood test, or how do you do that?
If he has a suspicion, or probable cause to believe you're under the influence, he can then request that you take a test, be it a breath test, a urine test.
Is there a breathalyzer breath test for marijuana?
No, there's not. Okay. Marijuana is not detected. Most marijuana DUI cases result in a 0-0 breath test. Okay. The officer then requests a urinalysis.
So he walks you down the line on the road, and you wiggle a little bit, or
he has enough suspicion to believe you may be under the influence.
Or he sees you stammer a little bit, or whatever that is.
Or you show him your medical marijuana card. That in itself may be enough for the officer to be even more concerned.
We're going into FMC and getting you getting a blood draw here.
Blood test, or just a urine test at the police station.
A urine. Okay, so that's another way to
detect
it.
That's the most common way that it's detected.
What's your advice on that? Let's briefly talk about if you're stopped and the officer says, "I'm going to give you a breathalyzer." Do you have the legal right to refuse that?
You do have the legal right to refuse field sobriety tests.
But what happens if you do?
You probably tend to get arrested anyways.
Okay.
That doesn't seem to deter them from going ahead to arrest.
All right. So
it becomes kind of a legal issue. There are some people who refuse everything.
There are attorneys, though, that I've heard advertising say, never, ever, ever do a breathalyzer. You know,
there are a lot who say that. I don't think that's the right answer, but the answer I give is more complicated.
Let's say you blow a .09, but you know you haven't. You haven't done anything.
Yeah.
And what's your rights at that point? Does that machine then have the right to basically call you guilty, or do you have alternatives?
Yes. You basically, in Ohio, you can't challenge the machine.
Really?
The Supreme Court of Ohio many years ago basically said that the machine and its operation and whether or not it's truly effective or accurate cannot be challenged in general.
But then what if you say, you know what, I don't trust your machine. Let's go into the hospital. I'll have blood drawn.
You can go
right
get
now.
your own independent test if you can get it done in sufficient time.
Yeah, what is it, a half an hour? 20?
3 hours.
3 hours? Oh, heck yeah. Get into the ER and
but you
draw
have to
some
keep
blood.
in mind it's going to be an hour that's 3 hours from when you got stopped.
Right.
So you got to get arrested. You got to go down to the police station. You got to blow. You got to have somebody come get you. They got to take you to FMC. You got to get the blood draw.
Right.
You're going to be running short on time.
And when it comes to the marijuana side of things, you're not going to get the field sobriety anyway. You're going to go into the wherever to get the urine test or whatever.
Police usually do the urinalysis at the police station.
They don't do that on the side of the road.
No,
Please tell me they don't do that on the side of the road.
That on the side of the road.
Well, okay, so even just showing, you're on medical marijuana, that could be the start of it.
That could be the start of it.
There's so many things here. And again, and I understand the way probable cause, the whole idea of, it's just to get the drugs off the streets. And, and we've had a lot of good happen from it. But what if there's and again, let's look at typical Friday night in central Ohio, and 4 kids are in a car, 4 teenagers are in a car, and the officer pulls them over because they're goofing off and they went left of center. And all of a sudden, he detects marijuana in the car. And Johnny's in the back seat who doesn't own the marijuana, but maybe he took a toke of it.
Right.
What happens there to those folks?
Well, normally it goes one of two ways. Either somebody fesses up and says, hey, the marijuana was mine. Most officers at that point in time, in my experience, will just charge the one person.
Okay.
But if nobody wants to claim ownership, they charge them all.
Okay.
And so then everyone kind of comes and says it wasn't mine, it was him, and they cross point at each other.
Exactly.
And so that's the usual what happens. But the guy, the young man who's in the back of the car who didn't smoke the marijuana, who's just in the car for the ride and the entertainment, because they're going to a party, he may wind up getting charged and maybe stomping on the road saying it's not mine, it's Timmy's, and Timmy's saying it's not mine, it's his.
Right.
So I've seen that before.
And see, these are the kind of scenarios that parents get the call from the highway patrol. Hey, we've got your son in custody. He was in a car with marijuana.
Right. And then in the future, it's going to be, it was his medical marijuana. And you have to begin to think about teenagers who are 18 or who have access to households with medical marijuana, how much more prevalent it's going to be for young
we haven't even talked about secondhand smoke in the car either. I mean, there's so many cans of worms here that can open up from this, right? I detect marijuana on you. Well, it's on my clothes because,
I live in the house.
Yeah.
And my mom's a marijuana.
My mom has glaucoma and has a medical marijuana card.
There's going to be a lot of legal questions that need to be answered as society wrestles with this problem of medical marijuana.
And that's where you need to know your rights. You need to know your responsibilities under the law. And if you find that worst case scenario, you need a good criminal defense attorney.
Well, thank you. I hope so.
All right. And by the way, I'm going to do the plug for you here at the end of the show. If you have any questions about this or would like to talk to Andrew Stevenson about any of this, or you feel like you need help with an issue, your number is 740-653-0961.
That's correct.
You can find information on the web, stevensoncriminaldefense.com.
Correct.
All right. Andrew, thank you. This is going to be a monthly series for the next year, and we appreciate your time and some great information. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
All right. The show, by the way, is called, make sure I get this right, Law and Society.
Right.
I always wanted to do that. Dun, dun. Where legal and social issues come together. Join us again next month. And if you would like a copy of this show, just go to our website, wolfohio.com. Go to our audio archives page, and you'll find it there.
Great.